I think we have to see the schism as an ongoing wrong.
You know, for nearly 1,000 years, the great schism between the Eastern Church and the Western Church has existed. It's a divide between two brother churches. We, in this increasingly secular world, can't afford this, in our opinion. We're forming a group called the Restoration Brothers, and what we want to do is try to begin a dialogue from the groundswell up, if possible, to get our leaders to finally heal this schism. Now, it's an extremely complicated issue. Nobody says it's easy. It's been going on for 1,000 years. Theological, liturgical, ecclesiastical matters involved. But can we afford to stay separate anymore in this insane world with war, disease, uh, upheaval, civil wars, America, Russia, and the brink of war? Can we afford this separation anymore? As Catholics, we know of Our Lady of Fatima saying that there would be a unification of the East and West, a promise. Now, the modern church in Rome, with all its liberal ecumenical dialogues, sure, they bring in the Eastern Orthodox and the Eastern Orthodox and representatives, but the problem is that the new church puts them on equal footing with the Jews, the Muslims, the animists, but they're not at all. The East and West schism is much more important to heal than anything between a Catholic and a Buddhist, or a Muslim or a Jew. Charles Coulombe, who will be my guest, is an excellent historian. He's a lecturer, commentator. His work spans church history, monarchy, politics, culture. So tonight we'll talk with Charles, who has a very sympathetic view, as I do, on this issue. I've seen many videos of his, and I think he can get the issue. But until then, enjoy this discussion. My name is Joseph Brothers, but this is going to be for the Restoration Brothers, getting the East and West together. Thank you. Hello, my good friend Charles Coulombe has joined us for this discussion about trying to heal the schism between the East and the West. Charles, I would like to ask you to put on your historian hat and give us, as best of unbiased play-by-play on what happened for those who maybe aren't as aware of the schism. They know it's there, they know it's about, but there's a lot of stuff that people don't really know about it. And maybe you could give us that. And like I said, when I joined my friend who's the Orthodox, he can have some commentary back to what you were saying, what he thinks on that situation. But I think you're actually aware of the other side's positions on probably most of this stuff.
Yeah,
So
I am.
so go
I
ahead.
am.
You give us a thumbnail of the thumbnail of 1,000 year schism.
Well, before we even look at the 1,000 years of schism,
Right.
we have to look at what unity is like,
Yeah.
which I think is much more important to begin with.
Yes.
And
Agreed.
even before we tackle that, there's a remark I think that has to be made. Whatever one thinks of his current positions, the current Patriarch of Moscow, Kirill, when he was the Archbishop of Smolensk, made a comment about reunion that I think is worth uh, meditating on
Yes.
for
Let's
both
hear it.
sides. And again, never mind whether you agree or don't agree with how he's been Patriarch of Moscow. Forget
Right.
it.
Right.
It's the comment itself that's important. I'm freely quoting, so it's going to be a misquote, but it's the gist.
Right.
Basically, what he said was that the schism is due to human sin. It's like a divorce.
Exactly.
And the we have to understand that it's a sin and that it's wrong on both sides because we all go along as though we don't need each other
Yeah, right.
and as though the other doesn't matter. Well, that's wrong. And it says until we come to realize that we're the same family, that we should love each other, and that the separation is in and of itself. Forget about the house and wives and wherefores. The thing
Right.
itself is bad.
Right.
It's now you could justify this, you could justify that, but he likened it to a divorce.
Yes.
Whatever
Yeah, I
you can
agree.
say, he said, she said, but at the end of the day, no divorce is an act of virtue.
Right. You want to love mom and you want to love dad, but they're at each other's throats and you're in the middle.
You're in the middle, and moreover, that was not why they contracted the sacrament of marriage.
Right.
You know, they did not do this for the purpose of what came later. They entered
Right.
into a holy covenant, which either or both saw fit to dissolve. Well, that's not a good thing, no matter how you cut it.
Right.
And so too with the schism. I think that and this again is on the theme that he came up with. I think we have to see the schism as an ongoing wrong.
Right. Festering wound?
What's that?
A festering wound, or is that a bit much?
Yeah, well, I'll a little bit later. I'll tell you how I think it's damaged both sides.
Okay.
I believe very firmly with every inch of my being that the ongoing schism has damaged both the Catholics and the Orthodox.
I agree.
It continues to do so and will do so until and unless it's fixed. And you can come up with your whys and wherefores.
Right.
But again, as with the divorce, that's nice.
Can
But then what happened? The year of our Lord, 380 AD,
hmm
Emperor Theodosius the Great, who was a saint in the Eastern churches,
Okay.
um, passed something called the Edict of Thessalonica. Now, from that time on, we'll say Catholicism for shorthand, but it's Catholicism slash Orthodoxy,
Right.
Nicene Christianity, if you want.
Okay.
Um, Chalcedonian Christianity, call it what you want. Our common faith
Right.
was the state church of the empire. And when you were baptized, from that point on, you gained both membership of the church, of course, but you also became a citizen of the empire. And that's, you became Romano, you became a Roman. All
Okay.
right. Now that idea continued even as the empire crumbled and barbarian kingdoms were built on its soil. Initially in the West, and of course later on, the East got their share. Bulgars and Serbs, various other Slavic peoples came into what had been the Byzantine Empire in the Balkans. But all of these different kingdoms, East and West, still conceive themselves to be somehow part of the empire. And that is an important thing to bear in mind. One church and one empire. All right. Now, as time went on, the Holy See after the 500s in Rome, and again, there's no question of the preeminence of the Holy See in law. If you read the Code of Justinian, he's very, very clear about the place of the Holy See in law. And in fact, he himself took a second coronation at the hands of a visiting pope. Of course, he also imprisoned the pope, so it shows that he, uh, he can be flexible. Anyway,
That's a good way to put it, flexible.
he can be flexible. So the thing was that the Lombards, in the wake of the Byzantine retakeover of Italy, the Lombards invaded, and the Byzantine emperors remained the protectors of the popes. But in the 600s, as we know, Muhammad had his revelations. The Muslims erupted out of Arabia. They conquered Syria. They conquered the Holy Land, Egypt. They pushed the Byzantines really to the frontiers of Asia Minor. and they went out by sea. They besieged Constantinople. They took Cyprus. They took Crete for a while. They went into North Africa. Eventually, they invaded Spain. Well, that plus later on the embracing of the iconoclastic heresy by the emperors meant that they were really not in a position to do much for the popes. And the popes were under constant pressure by, you guessed it, the Lombards. So what did they do? Well, they turned to the largest Catholic power in existence at the time, the Franks.
Hmm.
And the King Pepin of the Franks became a great protector. He died. And then Charlemagne, his son, invaded Italy when the Lombards got excited, defeated them completely, and annexed them. So
What year are we up to by now? What year are we up to by?
we're just about 800.
Okay.
So in the year 800, at the time there was a reigning empress in Constantinople, not an emperor, and the empress was Irene.
Hmm.
The Pope of the time crowned Charlemagne as emperor, reviving the empire in the West, as it were. However, after the Byzantines hated that notion, said, "Oh well, he's an interloper and all that." And a lot of Westerners said, "No, no, he's the replacement for Constantinople." What I think all of that kind of talk evades is the fact that for a long period of time, the empire had been quite easily ruled by two different emperors at once. One empire, two emperors, and
Hmm.
that was the case after Constantine. It was the case after Theodosius the Great. So, nevertheless, whose empire is it? It was a question that fed a lot into schismatic tendencies.
In the church, in the both sides of the church, in both sides of the church, would you
Yeah,
say the West and the East, schismatic ideas were coming
well, I
up?
mean, basically the notion we don't need the other guy.
Okay.
The Now there were a number of another problem that developed, of course, was the difference in language between Greek and Latin. So, for instance, the filioque, which everyone gets so excited about, in Latin isn't much of a problem, but the Greek translation of it really includes an heretical. I mean, by Western standards, the
Hmm.
Greek translation includes an heretical concept.
Right.
So you've got these linguistic issues.
Okay.
But again, as we find over and over again in history, where there's a will to work these things out, there's a way.
Right.
If there's no will to work them out, then we just treasure them as reasons to be separate.
So you're
Now,
saying there's no will at this moment to work it out, or there is a will right
no, no,
now?
no, not really. And there wasn't at different times in the past. Sometimes there were, and I'll touch on those.
Hmm.
So there was a brief schism, and I don't forget the details now. So your friend will have me for lunch. But
That's all
so-called
right.
Phocian system, the so-called Phocian schism,
Right.
the Patriarch of Constantinople went into schism from Rome for a relatively short period.
Okay.
Uh, the things continued. Uh, a number, slowly but surely, East and West began to draw apart. But the drama of 1054, which is usually seen as the occasion of the Great Schism and of the separation between us today,
All right.
it was not quite as dramatic at the time as we think of it. Now, why do I say that? Well, I'll tell you why. 1054, the Pope and the Patriarch excommunicated each other.
Right.
85 years later, the Pope gets into a fight with the Holy Roman Emperor Frederick Barbarossa, who is the Pope's major ally against Barbarossa, the Byzantine Emperor.
Mm.
Oh, that's an interesting factoid because it shows, at least to those people at that time, the schism did not seem to mean what it means to us. And going back a little bit earlier, I would say the same about the ramping up to the Crusades. How often in the First Crusade Do you hear the Eastern Schism mentioned?
Mm,
You don't.
no. Well, Charles, would you say it's a case of them just using your divorce metaphor of just this couple becoming cold and indifferent to each other?
Yeah, yeah, I would. And but as I'm going to indicate in a moment, they would later pay a price for that, which I'll
As they
indicate.
always do, right?
Yeah, yeah, and then continue to pay it. So at
Right.
any rate, then you have the Crusades. Now, to be fair, of course, the Easterners always remember the Fourth Crusade in 1204. They rarely remember the slaughter of the Latins in 1182, when all the Latin folk in Constantinople were butchered, and that kind of left a bad taste in Western mouths for some reason. They also forgot that when Innocent III, the Pope at the time, got wind of the fact that the Crusaders had taken Constantinople instead of going to the Holy Land, he excommunicated a lot of them.
Right. The Pope said that was wrong, right?
Yeah,
Basically. Yeah.
but they never remember that.
No. Yeah.
No. So
Well, we're not going to go down that path because we all have our
I'm
faults.
sorry.
We're not going to go down that path because we all have our faults. They don't remember
No, we
that.
all do, but I mean, it's never,
It's
it's
important
never,
though.
it's never. It is because they
Yeah.
never. It's never remembered,
Right.
and neither is the slaughter of the Latins.
Right.
Now, having said all of that, obviously setting up a Latin empire of Constantinople was wrong, and one of the terrible truths about the Crusades is that you see, apart from the First Crusade, where they more or less actually worked hand in hand. And oddly enough, that was the most successful crusade. Go figure. Uh, During the Crusades, they very often betrayed each other, and it's not. And the Fourth Crusade aside, I'm
Right.
talking about their dealings with the Muslims. There are a lot of bad episodes in that history that don't
Right.
reflect.
It's really hard to make a thumbprint of what we're talking about. I put you on the spot a bit because there's a lot of moving parts to it.
Oh, there
Right.
are, but generally speaking, when it came to the Crusades, other than the First Crusade,
Mhm.
um, they generally speaking were not being 100% honest with each other,
Right.
and that's that. And setting aside both the First Crusade is the best and the Fourth Crusade is the worst, taking those off the picture, you have uh, a very disedifying picture
Mhm.
of neither side playing honestly with the other.
Well, let me interject for a second, if I will. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah,
So,
sure.
yeah, it sounds like this is more like, I don't want to use the term secular because it means something different today than it did back then, but in a sense, it means like these are forces that are outside of the two churches that are working. What is going on inside the churches? If I may be pious and sentimental, where is Christ in these two churches? Why is
Well,
this a
you can't really separate the secular aspect. And so
okay?
they weren't moderns. You
Right,
know,
right. This is my
they
point.
didn't have
Right,
that.
right.
So, uh, and I'll point that out. Remember that both East and West had this concept of the Respublica Christiana, the Christian people, the Holy
Hmm.
Empire,
Right.
what the Germans called Abendland,
Hmm.
the French, the Occident. And this was the notion that you had within this sort of shadowy empire, the various kingdoms of Christendom. And more or less, they were supposed to function together. And if they fought each other, it was considered to be a kind of civil war.
Right.
And that was true in the West, it was true in the East. Where was Christ in all of this? Well, very often, frankly, he and his mother and his saints were being jointly venerated at the same time,
Right.
uh, which to this day you can see in various places. Saint Nicholas and Marie, Our Lady of Pochayev and Our Lady of Czestochowa in Poland,
Hmm. Right.
uh, Saint Mark Saint Mark in Venice, even Our Lady of Walsingham in England has an Orthodox chapel. So, to answer your question, except when they were being really snooty over things like leavened versus unleavened bread or whatever,
Yeah, right, right.
two sides, when they weren't doing that, the two sides on that level functioned fairly well together. And this was something that would actually occur a lot more recent. So, for instance, here in California, St. Herman of Alaska, the Russian Orthodox missionary, traveled through was it St. Innocent of Alaska, one or the other. Anyway, he traveled through the missions doing artwork through the Catholic missions
Oh,
and
wow.
discussing religion with the Franciscans in Latin. Uh, the Fort Ross and San Francisco Solano in Sonoma, the northernmost Catholic mission on the Russian Orthodox fort on the California coast. Their relationship was so symbiotic that when one of them, for whatever reason, didn't have a cleric, somebody from the other place would come over and do the Mass liturgy of the place that was lacking.
Was that allowed after Florence? Or is this before Florence?
This is the 1800s in
Yeah,
California.
okay, I'm sorry.
And
This is
I don't think on the frontier they really cared that much.
right.
See, they had reality going on.
Yes, this is great, Charles, because this is what my friend and I talk about. It just seems like these things that are keeping us apart aren't connecting to the reality on the ground in any way.
Well, they're not. They're the games of theologians. Now, and I'll take it a step further. In 1905, as you know, the Holy Synod of Moscow in 1905 was filled with ecumenists and liberals,
Mhm.
and St. Pius X was a modernist. We know all that, right? So
Okay.
in that year,
No.
well, what?
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 Nothing.
I
Go
don't.
ahead.
I don't get it. I don't pick up on it. Anyway,
That's okay.
so in 1905,
Right.
they have the Russo-Japanese War.
Right. Okay.
Well, the problem was that there were no Catholic chaplains in the Russian army, and there were no Orthodox chaplains in the Japanese army. So the heretical ecumenists of the Holy Synod and the modernists in Pius X made a deal.
Okay.
And the deal was that Russian prisoners of the Japanese could receive communion from Catholic priests. It's a communion
Right.
confession, and vice versa.
Wow.
Now, think about that.
Well,
That's what
this
we
is what
call,
we are thinking about. My
that's what we
brother and
call
I,
limited intercommunion.
right? Limited intercommunion. Nice.
And and it also shows. Well, I'll get back to that. So,
Okay.
we go going back to the Crusades. We move forward. Uh, the result of that backbiting
Hmm.
and deceitful behavior was the failure of the Crusades,
Hmm.
and the ultimate result of that was the fall of Constantinople and the Turks occupying Eastern Europe.
Right.
Now, the Council of Florence, again, they came up with a formula. I don't remember what it is. It's not. It's like the proceeds from the Father and the Son, but it was like proceeds from the Father through the Son, or something like that.
Right. Right.
And that was accepted by the largest majority of the Orthodox. It was certainly accepted by the Emperor at Constantinople. The Russians refused it, but more on them in a moment. The Russians, they come into the story in the 800s. St. Vladimir converts in 900 something, 99 or something like that.
Hmm.
It becomes the father of Kievan Rus, which
Hmm.
is the mother state of Russians, Ukrainians, and Belarusians alike.
Right. Correct.
The biggest
Right.
differences between those three peoples is who dominated them later after Kiev was destroyed. The Mongols dominated the people who were now Russians. The Lithuanians dominated the Belarusians, and the Poles dominated the Ukrainians. So
Hmm.
that, I mean, I'm really way oversimplifying,
Yeah, I
but
understand.
that's pretty much where their differences come from. And but they all descend from the same Kiev. And the
What
same,
did the religion of the Kiev Rus look like? Didn't look like Roman Catholicism, did it?
no, it
Right.
was Orthodox. It was, but except that it wasn't separate.
Right. There's no
I mean, that's
schism.
why Cyril and Methodius,
Right. Cyril and Methodius sent by Rome, right?
they were sent by Rome, and they were instructed to keep the Eastern rites. So that they went from Constantinople, they go to Rome with the relics of Pope Saint Clement they picked up in the Crimea, and they get sent back to the Slavic homelands. And some of the German bishops who were objected to their being there were told to shut up by the Pope himself.
Mhm.
I've delineated the
Right.
territories. This is where they are. If you
Yeah.
don't like it, lump it. So out of that mix arose the Christianity of Kiev.
Okay.
Now that, of course, gets destroyed by the Mongols, and it gets divided up into all sorts of little principalities under different branches of the House of Rurik. The
Hmm.
one that ends up becoming dominant is the Grand Duchy of Moscow. So keep them in mind. They're floating in the ether, but keep them in mind. All right.
Okay.
So now you've got Constantinople, 1453, and a very tragic thing ensues, a very tragic story. The Grand Admiral of Byzantium was a man named Lucas Notaras, and he was the one who made the fateful statement, better the turban of the Sultan than the tiara of the Pope.
Say that again, please. Better to.
Better the turban of the Sultan than the tiara of the Pope.
Oof.
That
Oof.
was Lucas Notaras, the Grand Admiral. Well, the emperor was very much in favor of the union, and that's why he's a blessed today. He died fighting the Turks. And of course, the last liturgy in Santa Sofia and Hagia Sophia under the Byzantines. I've had a couple, I must say, a couple of Greek Orthodox priests since the 1920s have uh, made some surreptitious liturgies in Hagia Sophia, and more power to them. But
Right.
the but the last official liturgy
Hmm.
in 1453 was a Catholic liturgy that named the Pope as well as the Emperor. So Constantinople falls to the Turk. Now here's our friends in the Grand Duchy of Moscow. In Constantinople, there begins what the Greeks call the Turkarchia, which was the period when the Turks appointed the patriarchs of Constantinople.
The Muslims? Is that what you're telling
Yes,
me?
yes,
They appointed him?
yes.
By what authority? And
Conquest. They were in charge. That was it. So
huh?
from 1453 until 1922, the patriarchs of Constantinople were appointed by the Sultan, and just as often murdered by him. Now, the the Sultan Mohammed the Conqueror, the first one, appointed a fellow called Gennadios II to be patriarch, and he was appointed specifically to break the union with Florence, of which he was a major critic. But Gennadios was interesting. He didn't just break the union with Florence, which was interesting enough. He was a Thomist, and there weren't that many Eastern Thomists, but he was one of them. And he differed with St. Thomas in two areas. One, the obvious one, the papacy.
Right.
The other, and this is the one I really get a kick out of, he accepted the Immaculate Conception.
Yeah, we were gonna get, I was gonna circle back to that with my friend if he was here about the
Gennadios
Amer.
II, the architect of the present schism,
Right?
was an adherent of the Immaculate Conception. Just let that sink in.
Yeah, right.
And opposed to his otherwise mentor, St. Thomas Aquinas.
Yeah, right. See where we are. Yeah.
What I love about this stuff is that it doesn't let anybody get smart. It makes everybody
No,
stupid.
right.
Not that that's a bad thing. Anyway,
Well,
so what should happen? But then in the meantime, the niece of the last Byzantine emperor, Anna Pediologa, marries the Grand Duke of Moscow in a marriage that is negotiated by the Pope at the time, by the Roman Pope.
Okay.
And it's on that basis the Grand Dukes of Moscow begin to call themselves czars, use the double eagle, and claim to be the heirs of Eastern Christendom as the imperial heirs. But
Hmm.
that marriage that justifies all of that was negotiated by the Pope of the time.
And this was what year?
14, I don't know,
Oh,
78.
so this is post-schism, so they accept the Pope's authority in this matter? Is that what you're
Yeah,
telling me?
that's what I'm telling you. So you see, again, it doesn't have to make sense, and very often won't.
All
So,
right. Would you say that you at this point did we give a good thumbnail of sort of what happened? Did we give a good thumbnail of sort of what happened? Or
well, we got a couple more points in the
okay.
couple more points to go.
Okay.
So, from that time, you have the long wars with the Turks in the 16 and 1700s, in several of which, and this is when they were their most successful, the Habsburgs, the Russians, the Poles all joined together to fight the Turks. And oddly enough, that was when they were at their most successful.
Hmm.
Almost as if being honest with your brothers in Christ against the common enemy, I don't know,
Seems
helps.
to work.
Hard to get through our little pointed heads, but So then, moving forward, you have the partition of Poland. Starting in 1772, you have three partitions. Why is this important? Well, in the 1500s, a large number of Eastern Orthodox came back to communion with Rome, the so-called Union of Brest.
That's what I
Uh,
am.
and that's the origin of the Ukrainian and Ruthenian Byzantine Catholics. Now,
Me. That's
uh-huh,
me.
yeah, that was the Union of Brest.
Okay.
Now, in the 1690s, the Habsburgs pushed the Turks out of Transylvania, and that's the beginning of the Romanian Byzantine Catholic Church. And then the same thing happens in Croatia and Serbia. So that's where your Byzantine Catholics come from. Well, you have the partition of Poland. The Byzantine Catholics that go under Austria, they don't have any problem. They're fine. The ones that go into Russia are tolerated initially.
Right.
But then in 1831, you have a rising against the Russians by the Poles. Now, the Poles and the Ruthenians didn't get on very well. But despite that, Tsar Nicholas I thought it would be a good idea to abolish the Eastern Church, the Eastern Catholic Church, in
He,
his
he began he began a persecution of the unions, correct?
sure did, 1836. But there's an important lesson out of that.
Okay.
A lot of Catholic bishops and priests were forced to become Orthodox at that point. Now, you will hear from some Orthodox today that Catholic sacraments are not valid. You will, trust me. Nicholas I, as we know, was a wild-eyed liberal ecumenist. Well, how many of those priests and bishops were reconsecrated or reordained?
I don't know. Zero.
So that's what I say when this comes up, and then I tell the person when they throw that at me, look, if you're willing to say that you're more Orthodox than Tsar Nicholas I, good. I'm glad you feel you can say that.
Right. Well,
I What's
well,
that?
I don't think people are aware that the persecution went down to the levels where they were taking Uniate children away from their Catholic parents.
They were, and it
And
was
it
a,
wasn't a pope, didn't a pope get involved directly with the czar?
he sure did, and that was actually the beginning of I say modern, but from then until 1917, diplomatic relationship between Russia and the Holy See. Now, this is by way of contrast, though, because Alexander the First had been very friendly with the Holy See because he loved the Poles.
Hmm.
Alexander the First, you know, the Austrian Habsburgs in the end inherited, as it were, the Holy Roman Empire, and it was sort of kind of always striving to try to inherit that ethos. The Russian czars, despite the whole Third Rome thing,
Hmm.
did not, as a rule, tend to play that role in a more pan-European sense. But Alexander the First really did. He very much acted sort of as co-emperor with the Austrian emperor.
Hmm.
And from that, we get the Holy Alliance and all that kind of thing in 1815. Uh, so I think Alexander the First is, when we're looking at the possibility of reunion, Alexander the First is a character we need to take a good look at.
Okay, is this a time? Is this a time then we could? Is this a good time to pivot to the discussion about reunification, or is there more
Not
detail?
quite.
Okay,
We're almost there.
all
Almost
right.
there.
I'm not being impatient. I'm just looking for
We're,
cues. Go
we're
ahead.
getting there. Don't you fret.
All
So
right.
we've got Alexander the First being very pro-Catholic.
Right.
His father had been was made the Grand Master of the Order of Malta. Tsar Paul was also pretty pro-Catholic. Alexander, Alexander's brother Nicholas the First succeeds him.
Right.
He is not pro-Catholic at all, and we've talked about that. Well, then fast forward, it's the year of our Lord 1870. Now, as you know, Blessed Pius IX was a wild ecumenist and modernist. So he convenes Vatican I, and he
Here we go.
invites the Eastern patriarchs,
Hmm.
not as observers or as this or as that, as full participants with no preconditions. Now, they all refused, some of them politely, some of them not politely.
Right.
But that's beside the point. The point is, on some level, as far as Pius IX is concerned, there was a degree of unity already existing. Now,
Right.
I would presume that he did not really take the Schism of 1462, which is what it really is. It's not
Hmm.
1054. It's
Right.
1462, Gennadios II, the beginning of the Turkarchia. My suspicion is that Blessed Pius IX simply did not take the schism seriously in a legal sense.
But
So,
they sure did.
oh, sure they did. I know they did.
Okay.
And the proof of the pudding, they had no problem with the Immaculate Conception until we
Until,
defined it.
yes, now it's a
They had no
problem.
problem with the Assumption until Pius XII defined it, even
Right.
though the cathedral in Moscow was named after the Assumption.
Right.
So you have these little weird factual deals. But one of the last point I wanted to make, and then we can get to reunification.
Right.
I told you that everybody has paid a price to this schism. Well,
Right.
apart from the Muslim victories, which really did a number on the history of the world. Apart from that, separated, each of the two became prey, I think, to its own worst tendencies, as though they were supposed to act as kind of a corrective on each other's worst excesses.
Like a husband and wife.
What's that?
Like your
Like husband and
metaphor,
wife.
the husband and
Yes,
wife.
precisely,
Right.
precisely. So I like to say that in the West, authority ate up tradition, and in the East, tradition ate up authority.
Hmm. Interesting. Yeah.
In
That's
the
well said.
West, in the West, well, we Catholics will tolerate any amount of heresy, but no schism. The Easterners will tolerate any amount of heresy, but no schism. That's the other way around. Any amount of
Yeah.
schism, but no heresy.
Right.
And to make it even weirder, the whole imperial concept. Well, in the West, the empire was destroyed by what you might call the triumph of the Guelphs over the Ghibellines, the pro-papal versus the pro-imperial party.
Okay.
In the East, the opposite happened. The independence of the church was crushed by the empire.
Oh, the
And
emperor's.
neither one was a victory. They
No.
were both disasters in their own way.
Right.
I go back to the notion of acting as correctives on each other's worst excesses. In other words, and mind you, I make the same comment vis-a-vis different schools of scholastic philosophy.
Right.
The Thomists versus Augustinians versus Lullists versus
Right.
correctives on each other. Why? Well, because human beings are fallen. I hate to admit that, but it's true.
What?
Yeah, I know. And left to ourselves, we will inevitably mess things up unless there's a reason not to.
Right.
Now, any one of us, if allowed to pursue our own bent, will come to disaster
Right.
unless we're held in a state of creative tension with other people going some other way. They
Right.
restrain us, we restrain them. And that, I think, the big history of the system, the big point, really, the big lesson,
Right.
is that both sides, without the other, went wildly astray. So much so, yes, I know how you feel about dear Pope Francis's pontificate, but run with me on this one.
Well, it's
So much
okay.
so
It's okay. We don't have
that
to go down that rabbit hole.
so much so that in the West, we came to the point to where you had a pope who thought if he burped, it was infallible.
Right.
And in the East, you have come to a point where Moscow and Constantinople have excommunicated each other, and there's no way out of that.
And the Ukrainians are fighting
Well,
each other.
they're divided in several bits, but I mean,
Right.
with Moscow and Constantinople
Right.
schism, and there's no one to decide between it. There's no one to repair it. There's no
Right.
one to fix it. So you have a setup where both sides have followed their respective bents to the reductio ad absurdum,
Mm.
to the reduction of the absurd.
Right.
Now, having said all of that, this is the concrete example of why I believe reunion, sooner or later, somehow or other, is absolutely essential.
Okay, that's a great pivot. This is my next question for you. Can you hear me?
I told you, yeah, I told you I'd have a pivot for you. I got one.
Thank you.
You didn't believe me.
Well, no, you're a pro at this. I'm not. See, I always get nervous that I'm not going to get the pivot I need because I'm always accused of interrupting people too much, which you know from our previous get-togethers is so true.
No, not either of that.
But anyway, so my pivot is simple, that if what would it, Charles, if you could like create all-powerful genie or an all-powerful genie, what would it actually look like, barring, divine intervention and the Blessed Virgin Fatima and the, of the Theotokos, which always freaks me out. So how's the Theotokos and the Blessed Virgin Mary of Fatima separate? They can't be. It's still Mary.
No.
Anyway, if you could use your historical background, everything you just said, and you could fantasize like you did with making a president, a king into America in your one book, how would you see? Just, I know you can't solve the problem. I wish we could tonight. That would be awesome. But how would it look to the average Catholic? How does this get done? Because if I can speechify a little bit more, my biggest problem is with the ecumenism of Vatican II is that they spend so much time ecumenating with all religions that it seems to me they've forgotten our brothers. It's almost like they've got their ducks in the wrong row. I mean, I don't care. I don't think a Catholic and a Buddhist getting along is as important as the East and the West getting along.
I
And
agree.
and if they could just focus all that energy that they put into building Abrahamic centers and all this other stuff, just fixing the schism. Let's say you get a pope, he falls down from Peter. Peter comes out of the sky and gives us a pope, fantasizing. And that pope is going to do what, Charles, to get this fixed, in your estimation?
Well, there's several things. Firstly, I think Benedict XVI very much had the right idea in this area, in the sense that we have to go back and look at the first 1,000 years. and before 1054 and see how it was these things concretely worked. Well, you had what was called the Pentateuch. You had five
Hmm.
patriarchates. Rome was the top. Now, each patriarchate within their own areas were supreme. But at the end of the day, it fell, if there was some problem or difficulty between patriarchates, or that a single patriarch felt he couldn't handle, then it would go to Rome. But only then. In other words, the whole thing that even our Eastern Catholic patriarchs sometimes have to deal with, of this constant intervention from Rome, that would have to cease.
Hmm.
Uh, unless, again, there was uh, a major doctrinal or pastoral problem that that a patriarch couldn't deal with by himself. Now, that having been said, the ecumenical councils were the major method whereby the church as a whole would come together against this sort of thing. And that brings us back to the imperial office, because up until and including the Council of Trent, all of the ecumenical councils, yes, I know the East didn't recognize Trent, but even in the West, our ecumenical councils were all convoked by the emperor, like
Right.
Nicaea. The, the imperial office, how you would revive it, what it would look like, that's a whole other kettle of fish. Nevertheless, I think it is intrinsic to the proper functioning of a reunited Christendom. Um,
Well, you'll have to
again,
define this term for me, this imperialate. Can you explain it to me like I'm a 5-year-old? Because that's basically what I am. What does this imperialate? I know you discussed it earlier, but it might have gone past me a little bit.
well, basically, it's a question of the succession of the Roman Empire. Now,
There is no
what's that?
there is no Roman Empire, so how would
Well,
we resurrect that?
not at the well. There you go.
All right.
Now, in 1914, there were two such people: the Austrian Emperor and the Russian Tsar.
Right, I was going to bring up Carl. Or not
The
Carl. Was that Carl?
Yeah, it was Karl.
Yeah, okay.
The double eagle from the time of Constantine, and anybody who used it had some claim to a connection with the empire somehow.
Right.
So like the Albanians used the double eagle of Skanderbeg. Well, it's not because they say they're the entirety of the empire, but it's because Skanderbeg was directly commissioned, you might say, by the Holy Roman Emperor of his time to fight the Turks, and that hence the double eagle.
Right.
The Order of Malta, they used the double eagle because Malta itself was an imperial fief. Serbia used the double eagle because at one point they had a Serbian emperor who claimed a connection with Constantinople, and on and on and on.
Russia's
Russia,
using it currently, right?
I'm sorry,
Russia's using it currently, correct?
Russia's using it currently because the Tsars used it, and they see it as a symbol of Russian nationalism. Whereas in reality, it's the opposite. It was a symbol of the universality that the Tsars claimed.
Right,
And
right.
say,
It's the empire.
of whom Alexander the First came the closest to actually acting like. Did that make sense?
Yes.
So, how would you revive that? Well, frankly,
Yes.
I don't know.
Right.
But what I do know is that if you take, for instance, the European Union as it is today, it's a wreck, but one could very easily see replacing it with a structure that was much saner. And presuming the countries became saner,
Mm.
garbage in, garbage out. But
Right.
remember that any of this would be dependent on some sort of religious revival.
Right.
Because,
Intervention by
yeah,
God.
well, I mean, it happened. It's happened in history. I mean, you never know
Yeah.
when things are going to emerge, and people are actually going to get some, get themselves some religion. Give me a good plague, and suddenly there'll be a lot of religious people.
Well, to tell you the truth, society, socially, there can't be a greater plague than what's going on around the world right now, as far as just the complete deconstruction of normalness. And
which
yeah,
which
and
if it goes to a certain point, will lead to some kind of collapse, and out of that will come something.
right,
Uh, I mean, the remember the imperial idea, just like the idea of the universal church, is it's had various, you might say, earthly incarnations. You know, I
right,
mean, the papacy has always been the papacy, but it's looked
right,
very different from one time to another.
right.
It's the same papacy, but it looks very different. And so, similarly, these other things, in 1,000 years, you may have a sort of quasi Holy Roman Emperor and a unified church, and they're all blacks or
Well,
Chinese,
right.
or who knows.
Who knows what? Yeah.
The point I'm making is that we can't know what the future brings, but there are certain things that are constant and keep coming back and back and back and back. I have no doubt that one day, sooner or later, they'll try to free the Holy Land. When you look at it today and you look at all the insanity going on there, it's
Yeah.
important to remember that there's only ever been peace in the Holy Land when it's been imposed from outside.
Well, when you kill the Prince of Peace on that soil, it's really hard to expect peace.
Well, it is, but nevertheless, if you look at the times when the Holy Land has been the most peaceful,
Mhm,
it was under the Romans and the Byzantines. It was under the Crusaders.
right?
It was under the Ottoman Turks, and it was under the British. And that's when they were at their most peaceful. They had some guy come in from outside and say, "All right, all of you guys, play nicely, but bad things will happen to you." Then you make a
Right.
few examples on both sides, and everybody gets real quiet.
Mm.
I mean,
In today's world, it's we're so diffuse in governance. It's almost global governance already going on. COVID proved that. Um, but
yeah.
down at our level, Charles, my ortho bro, as they like to call themselves, and me. What was funny that brought us together was we were in one of these cringe chat rooms with all kinds of various Christian sects and Protestants coming at us. And we formed an easy alliance against them because we both believe generally the same thing.
No.
And to the point though, my one friend who's very knowledgeable and sincere, and I know he's a good Christian man, he still is on his heels saying, well, you Catholics are outside the church. So when it gets down to our level, and I'm not going to debate that point per se, but when it gets down to that level, I don't see how we can ever talk but because it seems to me since Vatican II, I don't think Rome actually believes that the Orthodox are out of the church. And then I'm wondering how many of the Orthodox leadership believes Rome is out of the church right
Well,
now.
see, again, certainly Pius IX apparently didn't feel they were out of the church.
Right. This is things you're telling me tonight that I didn't even know about.
And by the same token, uh, one has to believe that on some level, the neither the Holy Synod in 1905 nor Alexander the First
Right.
thought that Rome was out of the church. Alexander the First, St. Paul outside the walls burned. And if you go there today, you'll see a lot of beautiful green columns made out of marble that it's only acquired in the Black Sea.
Wow.
That was from Alexander the First. He gave those as a gift to Pius IX.
Well, when did it become so obstinate against each other? Is that a modern thing?
It comes in and out in waves.
Where would you say it is right now,
Well,
in your estimation?
I suspect that the recent thing, part of it was the so-called Slavophile movement in the 1890s, the Pan-Slavic movement. That
Hmm.
that was probably a big piece of it. There's a book I recommend by a man called Vladimir Soloviev, who was a Russian philosopher. They call him the Russian Newman. But he
Okay.
wrote a book I recommend. You can get it online for free. It's called Russia and the Universal Church.
Okay. And he's Catholic or Orthodox or neither?
He started as Orthodox. He became Catholic. He received Orthodox sacraments on his deathbed because that was all that was available.
Hmm.
And as you know, even today, well, I mean, it's always been the case. If that's all
Yeah.
you can get,
Yeah.
you know. Hence, 1905 and the Holy Synod of St. Pius X.
Right.
That, the sacraments are that important, and that what I would invite my Orthodox friends to reflect upon is that if everything they say is true, they've kind of talked themselves into a corner they can never get out of,
Right.
and that corner is alien to Orthodox tradition.
And history, right?
Now, Orthodox tradition does not admit of the two major patriarchates excommunicating each other.
Right.
This is a situation they are not supposed to be in.
Well, excommunications aren't dogma.
Well, no, as we Latins know, but they are for the Easterners.
Oh, they are. Okay.
For
This
them,
is
you've got to understand that if you're an adherent of the Patriarch of Moscow, then the Patriarch of Constantinople and his adherents are out of the church.
is that new?
No, excommunication, excommunicatio, communication of the sacraments.
No, no, I mean, is that new that they've this schism? You brought it up
Yeah,
earlier.
it was over Ukraine. It's very new.
Oh, okay, that's what I mean. Okay.
And they stopped praying for the two patriarchs stopped praying for each other in the diptych. In the East, that's a big sign of I don't like you.
Yeah.
Uh, it is not a situation that is really endurable.
No, somehow it's got to break, right? It's got to give.
It's got to, but there's no means to do it.
And this is where our Lord comes in.
So our Lord comes in, and it's where if they were in union with Rome,
Yeah,
this is the kind of time and place
we need it.
where you need papal primacy. This is where you need the Pope to come in and say, "All right, guys, sit down for a minute." And this, again, you ask, what would it look like?
Hmm.
This this is the biggest sort of papal intervention that the average Easterner would get. And how often does it happen? Not very often. The fact that we're living in it is, it makes it a big deal for us. But when have Moscow and Constantinople ever been in schism before?
Well, if we're going to allow the Eastern Church to save face and the Western Church to save face. Let's talk about papal authority. Now, they have that phrase that he is the first among equals. I think that's
Yeah.
what they tell me. I'm not sure what that means. If it doesn't put him a little higher, I don't understand what the term means.
Well, what it means is he has a primacy of honor, but not jurisdiction.
So, meaning they don't have to listen to him if they don't want to.
Precisely, kind of like the Patriarch of Constantinople.
Okay.
Because
But
remember, the Patriarch of Constantinople is not the Eastern Orthodox Pope, and therein lies the problem.
well, they don't have a head, right? I think my Orthodox friend vehemently denied that the church was even a monarchy beyond Christ being its head.
Yes, and
And that is a problem for me because I don't see how you don't see that the church even in any as a monarchist, you would probably be able to clarify even better that it has to be a monarchy. It can't be an oligarchy.
one of the reasons I recommend Soloviev's church, the Russian Universal Church,
Right,
is he quotes a huge chapter to the papal primacy out of Eastern theologians whom they accept.
right.
I mean, they're, and I hate to say this, and I'm not saying it to be gauche,
No.
but the fact is that their historical analysis is simply incorrect.
Right.
Um, and the thing, too, you've got to bear in mind is that just as we Catholics can have a sometimes insufferable insistence on conformity.
Right.
They do the opposite. They love fighting each other. If you don't believe me, think of the old calendarists versus the new calendarists. I mean, bearded versus non-bearded, and on and on
Yeah,
and
right.
on. Well, there is, just as there's a sometimes stifling spirit of unity in the West, there's a paralytic spirit of discord in the East. It takes me back to acting as correctives
Right.
because we're
Yeah, but we don't say, I have to use modern Rome because it's all I have, but we don't say that they are, it sounds like we're not that rigid about this as they are.
no, we're not. But they will seize on things. Again, I'm thinking of the old versus new calendarist
Right.
fight. They will seize on things and make them the
Most
absolute
important.
sine qua non of orthodoxy.
I
You
see
know,
it now. Right.
and if you're not that, well, then you're not orthodox.
It's a sectarianism.
Yeah, very much so. And it's
Well, Charles, we are at a little over an hour and 10 minutes. And
sorry.
we are a little bit over an hour and 10 minutes. So I have to wrap it up simply because I want to make this consumable because
Yeah,
we really want to do I would call it a pseudo movement where Ortho bros and Catholics start talking to each other, at least at our level, and say, look,
yeah,
we got to get together. I mean, they're killing people in the streets. They're shooting very kind men in front of thousands of people in front of their families. All hell is breaking loose. We have sodomy running rampant. We can't afford not to be together anymore. But
no,
the
we can't.
problem is we're not Protestants, and I don't believe in getting the tribes together like certain people or the is it the tribes? I forget the word they use, not the
Yeah,
tribes.
unite the clans or
The
whatever it was.
Klansmen, right. I don't believe in the Protestant notion that the laity can do something, but Charles, can the laity do something on this matter?
Well, I go back to what the Patriarch of Moscow said. We have to understand that we need each other, that we're part of the same family,
Right.
and that our schism is a crime. It's a sin. Now, the thing about schism, and here I agree 100% with St. Thomas Aquinas, he says there's an odd paradox about schism versus heresy. Objectively speaking, heresy is worse against the rejection of God's dogma.
Right.
But subjectively speaking, schism is worse. Why? Because both the heretic and the Orthodox with a small o
Hmm.
are doing what they're doing because they believe they're fulfilling God's defending God's word, standing up for what God wants.
Right.
But with every single schism that has ever been, either or often enough both sides are in it for power and control.
The higher ups.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. The origins of these schisms inevitably lie in either or both sides wanting to be boss and exalting themselves. Now, I, for one, long ago came to a terrible conclusion. I couldn't recognize the schism that was promulgated by a man appointed by the Sultan for the express purpose of breaking the Union of Florence. I just couldn't do it.
Right.
Now, I understand a lot of my Orthodox brethren don't feel the way I do about it, but you know what? I don't care.
Well,
Because to me,
what we want to do is like I just said, we're sick of it, frankly.
that was good reason.
Listen, you brought in that metaphor, which is from great because I had that metaphor when I was discussing it with him. I'm a child of divorce. I know exactly how that feels. It's like, can't you two people get along? We're dying down here, but we can't very well divorce our parents and get new ones to fix it. See,
No, you
that's
can. And but what you can do is a workaround. you could do things like jointly pray to Our Lady
Hmm.
and to the saints like Nicholas and the apostles and Demetrius and George, whom we all venerate in common.
Saint Nicholas, right? Catherine,
Yep,
Monica, Jerome,
yep,
Simeon,
yep.
Saint Sabas,
Saint Vladimir.
Saint Vladimir, right?
You know, you could venerate. I mean, you know, you're a Ruthenian Catholic.
Yes.
Now, when I was in Kiev, I went to Saint Sophia's Cathedral
Hmm.
in Kiev, which is actually, if you think about it, the birthplace of Russian Orthodoxy, Russian Byzantine Catholicism, Belarusian Orthodoxy,
Right.
Belarusian Byzantine Catholicism, Ukrainian Orthodoxy, and Ukrainian Byzantine Catholicism, and Ruthenian Byzantine Catholicism. They all have their common origin in that little church in Kiev.
Wow.
And you know what one of the biggest artistic motifs in that cathedral is?
No?
The double eagle.
Nice.
So I would let me see. Let me see if I can. I will send it to you later.
Okay.
Some clever person online came up with a double eagle that was half Holy Roman, and half Byzantine,
Nice.
but it's a double eagle.
Right.
So I've always thought
Well,
that
would you advise us to go forward with this
yeah,
continuing?
yeah,
And could you through like you said, you get back to me in back channels, could you suggest other guests who might talk to me and my friend on this?
yeah, I could do.
Yeah.
I mean,
Um,
the thing you got to bear in mind, I was approached. Oh, it's got to be 8 years ago now, and I don't know what became of them. But I was approached by a Rokor priest, a Serbian Orthodox priest.
mhm.
There was a third one who was again very, very right wing conservative Orthodox
Right.
group that I don't remember which one. Anyway, these three had already established a dialogue with themselves. I don't know how to reach them now, but because you know their particular jurisdictions would crucify them if
Right,
they
right.
were interested in reunion. But what they explained to me, and I thought it was very true then, was that really the quest for reunion ought to come precisely from the most un, uh, unchanging and unchangeable elements of orthodoxy. It shouldn't be left up to the ones they consider wild and ecumenical. And, you know, I told them I agreed. Um, I put them in touch with a priest who sits himself the priesthood center. But I did a couple of long talks for them on the computer like this.
Yeah.
Um, and I mean, I was very touched because they knew that any whisper of this would ruin their careers. And
Yeah.
you know, for a cleric, the career is everything.
Yeah. Yeah. They have your pension in their pocket.
Yeah. So I
But
was,
I'm a lay person. I don't have a pension. But I don't have any authority either.
I was no, we don't. But at any rate, I would
Yeah.
just say that you know you can tell your friends that look at all the things, make a summary of all the things we have in common, all the saints, the holidays we have in common.
All right.
Um, like today is the feast of the exaltation of the Holy Cross.
Yes, it is.
Now this
Which
is
I thought was beneficial for this talk. I was like, wow. Because I've been attending a independent where John Sharp goes, your friend John Sharp. I attended that regularly. But today I went as a good unit to my Byzantine church in Harrisburg to do the feast day for the cross. And I said, what a good day to do this because I'm going to be talking about to Charles about this matter, about the
well,
East.
now imagine that you set up a deal whereby everybody after they went to their respective masses or liturgies
Mhm.
got together for a common meal.
Yeah,
And
something.
bear, bear in mind also that with the Western tradition, this is the great feast of chivalry, and the Eastern tradition has something similar because they constantly invoke the cross in terms of the military saints.
Hmm.
So this is the kind of thing you can look into,
Okay.
educating one another about what we have in common.
Start there, build there.
Yeah.
The problem is, like you jokingly pointed out, how wildly liberal and ecumenical Pius X was. You know me, I'm not very ecumenical for other religions. All right. I do love the East and the West, and I have no reason that I can think of why we're not together. I do, however, know precisely why I'm not with Buddhists or Muslims or Jews or any of those
Well, no,
people.
well, that's a whole other kettle of fish.
The
I
problem
mean,
is, if you come to Rome with this ecumenical idea between the East and the West, they're going to want to like soften it to, oh, but we also got to remember these people. We got to remember,
well, let me say this about that. I'm a
Okay.
canonical member of the Ordinariate, even though
Right.
I'm a Catholic.
Right.
And of course, the great thing about the Ordinariates, they got problems, but the great thing about them is that they've been able to rescue what was best of Anglo-Catholicism.
Right.
And as the future goes on, and either or both the Roman authorities and local diocesan authorities become more interested in evangelization, especially the Protestants. I mean, when Benedict launched this thing in the beginning, he had in mind uh, not just ordinariates for former Anglicans, but on the continent, Scandinavia, northern Germany, for former Lutherans,
Hmm.
because they have high church
Right.
Lutherans who are no longer really Lutheran in the appreciable sense.
Well,
Uh,
clearly Protestantism is dying off
yeah,
globally, even in America for sure. And
I
people are searching.
I am going this month, the end of this month, the weekend of the 27th, I think. I'll be in Denmark
Mhm.
for the Danish Latin Mass men's retreat.
Nice.
Now, there are like 20, 30, 40 people there, depending on the year.
Mhm.
Only a couple of them are cradle Catholics,
Okay.
including myself, of course.
Right.
Most of them have come to the church through the Latin Mass.
Mhm.
And last year, we near the retreat house, about a mile and a half, 2 miles away through the Danish woods, is an old 800-year-old church, Catholic originally, now Lutheran. Well, the first year, this will be my fifth year. The first year we went through the woods. It's a rosary walk, basically, we say the
Mhm.
rosary and so on. Well, we got there and basically sort of hung out for a bit and then turned around and came back.
Mhm.
The second year, it was the same. The third year, the church was open, and we went in and sang the Salve Regina.
Mhm.
Probably the first time, who knows when. Last year, for the first time in 500 years, the one of our chaplains offered the Tridentine Mass on that altar.
Wow. 1955?
What's that?
1955?
The Well, I guess I don't know what the missile was. Anyway, don't
Sorry.
split hairs.
I'm
And
just teasing.
the funny thing is that the pastor of the place
Mhm.
joined in singing the Agnus Dei and the Sanctus and
Mhm.
things like that. And as we left, he said, "For the first time in 500 years."
Wow.
And we got back to the retreat house, and I said, "Well, guys, there's good news and bad news." And they said, "What's the good news?" I said, "It might be the start of his conversion." They said, "What's the bad news?" I said, "If he converts, we'll never get to use that church again."
All right. Charles, just one last thing. Give a message to my ortho bros what you would like to say to them. Give a message to my ortho bros what you'd like to say to them going forward with this and how we can Keep it short but sweet, and then we'll call it a night.
Well, I would say what they said in as far as reunion. Um, the current schism is a sin. As far as reunion goes, I would say what they said during the first and most successful of the Crusades. Dieu le veut, God wills it.
God wills it.
Sa